150 years ago in America, the only path for young, pretty girls was to attend endless balls and marry a wealthy suitor. But there was one exception, Jo, the second daughter of the March family. Jo was a thoughtful, talented young woman. Rather than follow the traditional path of marriage and motherhood, the so-called stable life in society's eyes, she dreamed of making her mark through words, like Shakespeare. She wanted her name, Jo March, to endure for centuries, not to be forgotten in the dust of history or simply called someone's wife. For this, she even turned down a proposal from a wealthy young man, Laurie Lawrence. But in those days, opportunities for girls to earn a living were scarce, especially in male-dominated fields like writing. Jo had lost track of how many times she'd raced through the streets, knocking on publishers' doors and meeting editors. The moment they learned the creator was a girl, their attitudes turned arrogant, often trashing her work as worthless and refusing to publish it. As survival grew tougher, Jo realized she had to adapt, change her approach and make compromises to survive in the city and ease her mother's burden. So at the last newspaper office, facing an editor's haughty attitude and her work butchered beyond recognition, she gritted her teeth and accepted revisions that betrayed her vision. Finally, she got paid $20, way below market rate. But Jo was thrilled. It was her first paycheck for writing. When she rushed back to her rented apartment, a letter from her mom awaited, begging her to come home. Beth, her youngest sister, was seriously ill. Jo packed up and headed home at once. Walking familiar streets, memories surged like a tide into the girl's mind. Once so bright, warm, joyful, and lively, now she was alone, dragging bags through the snow. She pushed open the old wooden door that linked her dreams to home. Her mom and sister Meg rushed to hug her, just like old times. It felt like nothing had changed. But when she entered the bedroom and saw Beth, weak and fading, in the bed, Jo's heart broke. Flashbacks hit again. Once, they'd all been passionate, vibrant girls with big dreams.
I wish I had heaps of money and plenty of servants so I never had to work again.
Well, you could be a proper actress. I can't be an actress.
I have lots of wishes, but my favorite one is to be an artist in Paris.
What about your music queen, Bess, huh? I only do that for us.
The four sisters talked freely about their dreams. The youngest, Beth, hoped the war would end soon and their family would be together again. Beth was the best of them. She was quiet but loved playing piano. Shy but incredibly kind, giving up her Christmas breakfast and blankets to poorer neighbors and their kids. But fate was cruel, hitting this kind-hearted girl with suffering. One morning, Beth fell sick with scarlet fever after delivering food to neighbors as usual. Shortly after getting home, her temperature spiked, and she slipped into a coma. Thanks to the doctor's care and her sister's vigilance, Beth regained consciousness. But she never got better. The fevers had weakened her heart. Even a slight cold could knock her down. Jo looked at the sickly girl in bed, her heart breaking.
So good to see your face. We're going to the sea to get you strong and well.
The sea?
Jo took her to the beach. They sat on the sand together, one reading softly from a book, the other listening quietly with her head bowed. Such a tender scene, but why did it feel so bleak? Jo tried to ignore the gloomy weather, but her mind kept wandering to the past. The four sisters had once been invited to vacation on this very beach. Back then, Beth was healthy, the sun shone bright, and golden light warmed them all. They'd raced and played on the sand, their laughter echoing over the vast ocean. You could almost still hear it, if you listened. Now, only Jo and the ailing Beth were left on that beach. And soon, even Beth would be gone.
And I'm not afraid. No. It's like the tide going out. It goes out slowly, but it can't be stopped. I'll stop it. I've stopped it before.
No matter how good a writer Jo was, how good at rewriting endings, she was powerless against fate. Beth died, taken in the bloom of youth. After the funeral, Jo silently packed Beth's things, locking away every item that still smelled of her in an old wooden chest. Locked away too were the happy days of their childhood. In the attic filled with memories, Jo was trapped in a cage of nostalgia, reality and memory tangled together, the beauty of the past and the cruelty of the present tormenting the poor girl. Jo felt utterly alone. Would she choose the same again, leaving home to chase her dream in New York? Her mom ached seeing her depressed daughter. She didn't want Jo stuck in the past. She wanted her to go back to New York and keep chasing her dreams. But Jo regretted it. She wished she could be like the girls in books, happy to give up the world, so everything would be easy.
Perhaps I was too quick in turning him down. Lori, if he asked me again, I think I would say yes.
But do you love him?
I just feel I'm so lonely.
The road to success alone was tough and lonely, a pain most people couldn't bear. Beth's death made Jo's pain 100 times worse. She felt like she couldn't take it anymore. She wavered, even knowing it was a mistake. Jo wrote a letter to Lori and stuffed it into the old mailbox in the woods they'd once used, hoping to win back his love. Desperate to feel loved, the memory of their first meeting sharpened in her mind.
Jo. 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 Wake up.
Teddy, oh, you're back.
Are you glad to see me then?
Before Jo could recover from the rapture of their reunion, Teddy pronounced a tidings most grievous to her heart. He was wed, and his spouse was none other than her sister Amy. Jo stood stricken, then swallowed her confession, scolded her features, and blessed them with a smile. Whilst all eyes were upon the newlyweds, she stole to the woodside mailbox, retrieved the love letter, and cast its tattered remains upon the stream. As the fragments drifted from sight, the mists of confusion in Jo's mind began to lift. In truth, her regard for Teddy was never love, but a mere delusion to flee the blows of failed hopes and lost kin. They had ever walked the line betwixt friendship and fondness. Their acquaintance began at a ball 7 years past. The March sisters of marriageable age were invited to an evening assembly. Meg, the elder, clasped Jo's arm, whispering courtesies, but was soon drawn away by friends, leaving Jo alone. Unlike Meg, who shone in company, Jo was a novice, ill at ease and isolated in the corner. Then a strange gentleman spied the maid across the room, bowed, and approached. Panicked, Jo fled along the wall and slipped into a dim, secluded chamber.
Oh, sorry, I didn't know anyone was here.
Not at all. Stay if you'd like. Miss March, isn't it? And I'm not Mr. Lawrence, I'm only Lori.
Discovering he was the neighbor's grandson, Jo relaxed, sinking into the sofa with her natural bluntness. The London-bred youth, reared in aristocratic circles, was charmed by her frank simplicity and entreated her to dance. She declined with a laugh, for her gown was singed, and Meg had bade her keep still. To her surprise, Lori, a gentleman of means, did not scorn her poverty but devised a plan. They might dance in the dim hallway, where none would see the flaw. Hand in hand, they moved softly past each window, lest they be spied. This secrecy lent a thrill to their dance, a private adventure, with the street lamps glowing as if for them alone. No need for formal airs, they might move as joy bade them. Alas, Meg then sprained her ankle, and Jo was compelled to escort her home.
Well, let me take you. It's right next door.
Oh, no thank you. We cannot accept.
By his insistence, they accepted a ride. Upon entering, they were met by a clamor of sisters rushing downstairs, chattering over Meg's injury, with Jo at the fore, directing the bustle. Lori lingered at the edge, envying the warm, harmonious scene. Then Mrs. March and the girls spied him.
Baking in the middle of the night, and don't mind the clutter, Mr. Lawrence.
Lori, please.
Can I call you Teddy?
Yes?
You must be part of their...
Their eyes met, and sparks of affection flew. Lori departed with a heart full of longing. But scarce had he left when he looked back at the attic window, where Jo's shadow was bent over a book. Already he yearned for their next meeting. But patience was not his virtue. He became a watcher, spying on the March household from his window, often neglecting his studies and vexing his grandfather and tutor. On Christmas, he beheld the sisters trudging through snow with their mother, bearing food and blankets to a poor family. Knowing the March's generosity, he persuaded his grandfather to send a lavish gift. As he hoped, the girls rejoiced, and the families grew closer in their exchanges, though class distinctions lingered. One day, while wandering in thought during lessons, he spied a girl crying beneath his window.
Hello there! Are you hurt?
I'm Amy, but I can never go home again because I'm in such trouble. Look! Mr. Davis hit me.
Amy had sketched a droll portrait of her tutor and been caned. Lori took her in and bound her hand. Grateful for his kindness, and learning he was no stranger to mischief, Mrs. March warmly invited him to join their company. Thus, Lori became almost one of the Marches, even joining their all-female theater group. They spent their days in play rehearsals, balls, and outings, in high good cheer. Lori delighted most in Joe's company, but she was yet unawakened to love, her thoughts wholly upon her writing and kin. Amy was of another sort, embodying the era's ambition for women, to rise in station through marriage, though she too longed for tender love. From the first night Lori drove Meg and Joe home, Amy had marked the handsome neighbor. Out of jealousy, she burned Joe's manuscript whilst Joe was abroad, a cruel act against her dearest possession.
Soul, which is much more important than money.
Has anyone taken my novel?
Tell me who makes you pay! I burnt it up! Told you I'd make you pay, and I did!
Their sisterly bond, once so close, was strained. They were reconciled by Mrs. March, but something had irrevocably changed. Only Joe's passion for writing remained unaltered. When Meg fell in love with Lori's tutor, John, the girl who once dreamed of wealth and ease had chosen love over all. Their wealthy, bitter aunt, though she sponsored the wedding, spoke harshly.
You'll need to marry well.
But you are not married, Aunt March.
Well, that's because I'm rich.
Well, so the only way to be an unmarried woman is to be rich.
Yes.
But I intend to make my own way in the world.
Oh, well.
Joe disdained her aunt's logic, believing women should earn their own worth. Thus, when Lori confessed his love after the wedding, she declined, for she loved her writing and freedom too dearly to part with them. Heartbroken, Lori fled to London to mend his spirit. Meanwhile, Aunt March chose Amy, the most reasonable sister, to accompany her to Europe, where she might refine her art and French. There they reunited, their affection grew, and they were wed. Joe journeyed to New York, chasing her dream. Though often rejected, she grew steadfast in her purpose. She returned only when Beth fell gravely ill. When Beth died, Joe found herself utterly alone. Career setbacks, the eternal farewell of family love, and the disillusionment of romance stabbed the young Joe like icicles. On a lonely night that felt like suffocation, she trembled as she struck a match and threw stacks of original manuscripts, soaked in her hard work, into the fireplace. The leaping flames devoured the words, as if burning her shattered dreams. Until the last notebook slipped from her lap, it was the poems she had written for her sister Beth. Beth's whispered words during her final moments suddenly echoed clearly in Joe's ears.
Write something for me. You are a writer. I'm very sick and you must do what I say.
This had been her sister's last request, yet it became an eternal regret. People say, pain is the soil of literature, and in her excruciating agony, Joe finally understood the weight of this sentence. She returned to the attic where the four sisters' laughter had once lingered and began writing furiously on the manuscript paper. She wanted to erect a monument to their story, to let sisterly love live forever in words. From sunrise to sunset, from starry nights to cockcrow, Joe worked like a tireless perpetual motion machine. When extremely sleepy, she would take a short nap, only to grab her pen immediately upon waking. Inspiration erupted like a volcano, and manuscripts covered the attic floor. Yet reality poured cold water on her again. The editor at Volcano Publishing casually tossed the manuscript into a corner. They wanted scandals and sensationalism, not warm family narratives. After reading the editor's reply, Joe let out a long sigh. She had already anticipated this outcome. In this era, society was indeed harsher on women. But fate revealed a glimmer of hope in the despair. Aunt March, who had once argued with her about as the only way for a woman not to marry to become rich, left her a luxurious manor. This stubborn old woman might have already understood the rebellion and perseverance in Joe's soul during their debates and had prepared a way out for her. However, Joe did not indulge in material gifts. She decided to use the money to establish a school where both boys and girls could attend, making up for the educational regrets they had once suffered. Just as she was vigorously preparing for the school, her work sent to the publisher also ushered in a new turning point.
What is that? What do they want?
I have no idea.
Father, are you publishing
What
this?
happens to the Little Women?
Tell me you have the rest of this book.
Moved by his daughter's pleading to see the later chapters, the man re-examined this warm-hearted work and considered the possibility of publishing it. Later, he wrote to invite Jo for a face-to-face meeting at the publisher's office, demanding that she revise some plots. It was absolutely impossible for the female protagonist not to get married. Jo argued that the female protagonist in the novel had made it clear from start to finish that she did not want to marry. Wouldn't it be contradictory if she got married in the end? But no matter what she said, the man did not change his attitude. The female protagonist must get married, or no one will buy it. This was the iron rule of publishing, with no room for negotiation. Jo had no choice but to compromise. But how to revise it so that it could meet the publisher's requirements while still expressing her own stance? This was a headache. In the tug-of-war between compromise and perseverance, Professor Bear, an old acquaintance from Jo's shared apartment in New York, suddenly visited. Her family mistakenly thought this male friend was her suitor and showed great enthusiasm, trying hard to matchmake them. Feeling everyone's eager gazes, Jo couldn't help but shake her head and smile. Suddenly, an idea struck her: why not use Bear as a prototype? Thus, in this novel that had been depicting a new era woman pursuing dreams and freedom and unwilling to marry, an absurd yet playful plot was added. In the vast rain curtain, with her family's encouragement and support, the female protagonist drove a carriage along a muddy path in search of her lover's trace. Finally, they reunited in the bustling crowd at the train station, confessed their love, and then hugged each other tightly. Jack shall have Jill. This romantic to the point of being cheesy adaptation was both a compromise to the market and a hidden irony in the text.
I love it. It's romantic. It's very moving. That's very emotional. Now, there's the question of the contract. I'm prepared to give you 5% of the royalty.
And I'll keep the copyright. Also, I want 10% of royalties.
5.5%. That's very generous.
Sitting at the desk now was no longer Jo March, the character forced into a happy ending in the book, but Louisa May Alcott, holding a pen. She had modeled the character after herself, letting Jo bear the dreams and struggles, yet in reality, she chose a different path. Remaining unmarried for life, supporting her family with multiple identities as a maid, teacher, and seamstress, and always guarding the purity of her writing throughout the long years before Little Women was published. The unexpected success of Little Women shocked everyone. For over 100 years, this imperfect work has become an American literary classic. Jo's story is like a beam of light, illuminating the confusion of countless women. Women can have not only marriage but also dreams and pursuits. Louisa proved with her words, true fulfillment has never been about living up to others' expectations, but about making the soul shine brightly through the cracks between compromise and perseverance.
I just feel like women, they have minds and they have souls as well as just hearts, and they've got talent as well as just beauty. And I'm so sick saying that love is just all a woman is fit for. I'm so sick of it.